Okay, I'm working on a 2006 Mazda Tribute here, and I'm going to be replacing the transmission. It's still able to be driven just a little bit, enough to just move it around the yard basically, and then after a few minutes it starts slipping. You can't move it very long. Once it warms up, it just completely slips and does nothing. But it actually will go forward and backwards at this point. And so we're going to get started replacing this. Now, the last time that I done one of these, I removed the engine and transmission out together through the top, and we're going to just attempt to drop this out the bottom, just the transmission, and see how this goes. I've got a replacement sitting over here, low mild transmission, like 100,000. The vehicle itself has about 185 or so, and so they got the CV axles still on it here. They just left them in to keep anything from getting in there, contaminants or anything leaking out. So here's what it looks like by itself. I just got it set on my cheap Harbor Freight cart here. Now, this transmission happens to be listed for, now it's a different, when you get one you got to make sure, because there's a 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive, so make sure you pay attention to that. And also, this transmission was listed as being an 05 to 06, but being only through like 10 of 05, and so happens that this vehicle is actually built after that. It's in the 11th month. So the only difference I know of they had going on there in 05 was they went from the column to the floor shifter. I don't see there being a problem, but I hadn't even compared them to see what's going on. But the transmission is basically the same, so we'll see. If we have to swap some stuff over, it's not going to be a big deal. So like with anything else, we're going to go ahead and just work on getting the vehicle lifted up and get some blocks, jack stands under here, and get our wheels off and stuff. Okay, with the wheels off, the first thing I'm going to do is get in here and focus on this axle nut. We need to get this broken loose. Now, I have sprayed it down really good. It's very important to spray that with WD-40 or something and let it soak for a minute. Now we're actually going to take our tire and we're going to push this out. So just give that a push. It's just a little center tap there. And then we're going to take this wheel and go ahead and put it back onto the vehicle and get some weight back on it here so we can break this loose here. Okay, to avoid having to put weight back down on here, I've just got a tire and I've just wedged it there. Now you can break this loose a couple, or actually 3 different ways. You could use a long cheater pipe like this. Also take and hit it here really hard with a good heavy mallet and you can break them loose, or if you've got a really powerful impact, you can break it loose that way. You can see it didn't take a whole lot here to get this, but you will at the very least need to use a good extension and get some spray lubrication on there. You can see I only put like 3 of the lug nuts on there. It's plenty enough to do this. Said if you don't want to use a wedge like this rock I'm using here, you can simply lower it back down on and put weight on the wheel. But I've got this broken loose. That's plenty good enough for now. We're going to go ahead and take the lugs back off and just remove the tire at this point and continue on. Okay, I'm using a 32 millimeter here, by the way. I don't know if I'd mentioned that. We're going to go ahead and completely remove this, and we're going to take, at this point, we're going to spray some WD-40 right up and around in here really good and just let that soak for a bit. Okay, the next thing we're focusing on, I've got an 18 millimeter back here, and we're going to be removing the upper and lower 18 millimeter bolt holding this entire bracket for the brakes on. Just to show you, there is the lower one, 18 millimeter. Now these are really tight. I want to say they're around 130 foot-pounds. You'll note the breaker bar and the extension, the cheater pipe. These are going to be pretty snug, so you'll want to definitely have yourself a breaker bar to get these loose. Okay, so we're just removing these. Once you get them broken loose, they're very easy to remove. The next thing we're going to do is just get us some wire or something up here to hold this up a little bit. Now, before we do that, we're going to remove this clip right here. Just take yourself some pliers and just give this a pull, or take a screwdriver or something, and you'll just pry this, or like I said, get you a pair of pliers works just fine as well. But we're going to remove that, and then that will give us some more slack to pull this up out of the way and also get it out of our way. Okay, and there's that clip, so it just holds tension on that. Now that's got to push it down a little bit. It's got a little place in the back there that lines it up, just like this little notch right here that goes into that. So when you go to put it back in there, you have to kind of line that up on that back, that little notch right there, or it won't want to go in there. You can see the little divot right there. Now you'll notice these things are cracking. I've just moved it. It's already cracking, so this is something that's going to need to be addressed. And these seem to be a problem. You can get these at any part store though. You just undo this fitting, and the same thing down here, and then just bleed the air out. So we'll have to address that. But anyways, we've got that. So go ahead and take this top 18 millimeter, and then we're going to get some wire and wire it right up there on that spring out of the way. And just to show you, this whole thing is loose now, so it's going to just lift right up and off of here. So I can just set it right up here momentarily, and I'm just going to get some wire or something and wire it up. Okay, so there that is up out of the way. The next thing we're going to get on this ABS wire, we're going to go ahead and remove this right here. And make sure to put the bolts back where they go if you can. I already put the bolts back into the caliper, those big bolts. And said just put them back. Put all your bolts back where they go as you move along. That way you don't have a lot of guesswork later, and that'll just lift off there. We're going to go ahead and stick that bolt back. Okay, next we got an 8 millimeter. Now this is the actual part that goes down into this hub that reads for the ABS, and we've got to get this little 8 millimeter bolt, and then we're going to wiggle that up out of there with a screwdriver. Okay, and you'll just take you a flat screwdriver and just get down here underneath that plastic part there and just wiggle it. Work it with your hands while you're doing that. And sometimes they can be stubborn. So there that is. So we'll just set this up out of our way somewhere where it don't get damaged. Okay, we're going to get to work on this up here. It's going into this strut. You're going to need an 18 millimeter bolt on this side, and then we'll get over on this other side the 18, and we'll just hold this. Okay, we just put those flush, and then we're going to take the shot filled mallet, just hit those. That should be enough to get it the rest of the way through. So a lot of times you can just wiggle them out. And if you have to, you can move this knuckle around a little bit. So there's that. And then we'll just get the lower one here. Okay, I'm just going to work that out of that strut there. And also going to take and hit this. And sometimes these will get stuck. That's why it's very important to spray it down well ahead of time, because they rust in there. So if you can't just knock it with a shot filled mallet, then you've definitely got a problem. So that's moving really good. So I'm going to go ahead and finish working this out. This up here. And then we'll just kind of push that back as we go. Okay, and you can see with that pulled down out of there, and I went ahead and put my bolts back in there. It slips right out of there, no problem. Go ahead and put this back on the end so you don't damage your threads. Okay, so I've just done the same thing on both sides. I have the knuckle loose from the CV axles. Now before we continue on doing anything else, the very next thing we're going to do is get underneath here and drain out all this transmission fluid. So we're going to get us a pan and get underneath here next. Okay, so we're coming under the center of the vehicle here. We got us a drain pan. You'll want to get you a good sized ratchet. I'm using an extended handle. Got a 3/8 extension on here. So we're going to get under here, and you'll come right back here. You'll notice this piece here on the driver's side, this brace, and right up here, that's the plug, and this 3/8 will slip right into it, and we're just going to go ahead and loosen. These can be pretty tight. That's why I say a good extended handle works wonders. It can be rather difficult with a small. So it's coming real easy here, and this stuff will really pour out of here quick, so definitely have your pan ready to go here. I'm going to go ahead and just finish removing that. Okay, so I'm just working this plug out here. You can see what I'm talking about. It really pours out of there in a hurry. So we wouldn't necessarily need it all drained, but we're going to be hauling it for scrap, so we need to get all the fluid out. And when we go to take these CV axles out, we don't want fluid dripping out everywhere, so we're going to get absolutely all the fluid that we can get out before we proceed on. And starting to get dark, so I'm probably just going to call it quits for the day and get back on it in the morning here. Okay, so we're back out here today. Before we remove this driver's side CV axle, we're going to go ahead and remove this plastic shroud here. Just to show you, there's just 10 millimeters holding it on. Looks like there was little plastic clips that are missing here or something, but there's going to be some underneath here as well, just to show you. We've got one here. We've got one over here. We've got some underneath here behind the bumper. And then you actually have to go over to the center here and take this one out because these are like two pieces. One goes over there and one here. So we're just going to move the one on this side. We're going to take these tins out around here and go ahead and take this piece off before we move on. Okay, so we're just getting ready to remove this here. You actually see quite a bit more with that out of the way. Now we're going to have a brace and stuff we'll have to get out of the way here as well, but we'll work on that later. Right now we just want to go ahead and get this CV axle out. So we're going to get up here now. Okay, so we're over here on the driver's side, and you can see how we can see this now with this shroud out of the way. I've just got a crowbar. You can use just a big pry bar. However, I can get a little more leverage with this. And we're just going to go right in through here and just kind of go to rocking it a little bit. And we shouldn't have any fluid coming out because we drained it, but you know, if you want to, go ahead and put you a pan down there just in case. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and pull this out here. And you can see the length of that shaft that goes in there. And there's the clip that you see, that C clip that holds it into place. Now, you know, it's a good time to inspect these while you got it out, and you can see that this is starting to dry rot and crack, so this is going to have to be replaced soon. It's still working, but it's just a matter of time. If that's cracking, you need to go ahead and at the very least get you a new boot, but it's just as easy and cheap to get a new CV axle and just replace it without having to mess with all that. So now we're just going to go ahead and get on the other side over here. Okay, so we're over here on this passenger side. Going to work on this CV axle, and it's a little bit different than the other. The first thing we got is this plastic cover right here that's going to get in our way. If you look up here, that's a 13mm nut, and there's another one right below that. We got to get those out. So the first thing we need to do is get over here with an 8, and we're going to remove this little 8mm bolt. And then if you get that loose, it's clipped right here. You can see, give that a little push back in that direction. Get that unclipped. You see that clip that's coming through right there. So either give it a push or where that pin is coming through, or get on the other side. I'm going to try to just push that pin back through from this side because it's easier to see from here. Okay, there's what that clip looks like, and it's actually one of those little Phillips, but it's difficult to get to. And I was delicate and pushed it back, but this part still broke, so we'll have to put another one back on there. But we don't have to remove the shroud, we just need it out of our way. You can see how it's just kind of right there in the way of getting to those two nuts that we need to get to. So we're just going to like move it, wiggle it out of the way for now, and get where we can get in there to both of those easily. Those are 13s. We're going to get in here. We got an extension, and we'll just come right through here and get both of those nuts off of there. And there's both of those 13mm off of there. Now with that out, we will be able to wiggle this loose and that'll just come off there just like that. And there's no clip, it's just being held in there like that. So we'll just go ahead and pull this completely out of the way as one assembly. Now if you do need to replace your CV, then you separate it down here at this joint shaft. We're going to go ahead and set this aside. Alright, with our CVs out, we're going to go ahead and get this battery disconnected here and just completely remove some stuff up here. We'll go ahead and get our positive off here as well, and then we got this hold down clamp that hooks in the back. We'll just go ahead and get these loose and completely remove this. It's got a hook down there as well on this side, but once you get enough slack, you can just disconnect this. Okay, and I can't stress enough, as you're going through removing stuff, just put your nuts and bolts back where they go. Okay, you're going to have some 8mm in this battery tray. Go ahead and get all these out, and we'll lift this up and out of here. There may be a snap with a wire connected to it. Just unclip that if you have one. Okay, we're just getting this up completely out of the way. Go ahead and get this vacuum, just twist that. Give it a pull up off there. Just kind of pops up out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and loosen this 8mm right here, this band. Now we also got a tin right there. We'll go ahead and take that out. We're going to go ahead and push down and disconnect this. Go ahead and unsnap our airbox. We're just going to go ahead and lift up and separate this. And there we have that part. Really bad air filter. Now this here, once that, it's got a rubber grommet. We'll just unclip from that and just pull it up and out of there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the shroud off. There's a 8mm nut on there. Sometimes these don't like to come off. They just want to spin, but we're going to attempt to get this cover off out of the way. Okay, so we got that cover off. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of coolant lines and stuff running everywhere. We're going to have to disconnect it here to drain it, but before I do that, I'm going to go underneath and I'm going to go ahead and focus my attention on getting our bolts out of the torque converter and removing some stuff down here before I go to work on that, because once this stuff starts dripping, it's going to just make it a little bit more miserable. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that now. Okay, down here under the center, you'll notice this rubber piece here. It's got some clips that are just kind of holding it on, and you just have to push those up and off of there, and then this will come out just like that. And now we can see up in here to get to our bolts. We're just going to go ahead and start rotating it around. We'll have to get out here with a socket and hold it while we break these loose. And I'm using an 18mm out here, just got an extended handle ratchet. Okay, so we rotated the crank out here. It's going clockwise till we lined it up. I'm just taking a 15mm, a big ratchet, because these are pretty tight. You have to hold this at the same time till you get it broken loose. And then we're just going to go ahead and remove these 15mm nuts. These are locking, self-locking nuts. And we're going to go ahead and take that completely off of that stud there. There's the first one. Now we're just going to rotate it around. We got 4 of these. So we're just going to rotate them and take them each out one at a time. Okay, so there's our torque converter nuts out there. So that is loose. I think we're going to go ahead and go back up top now. And we don't have but like 3 bolts up top. We got some down here, but they're just not going to be easy to get to without removing the hoses and everything. So just to show you on this transmission here, where we've got our bolts coming through to the top, there's actually on this side, where if you were looking from the passenger side, you got one coming in. These are coming from the back. You got a few up here. You got one over here. So there's about 4 up here, and you really can't even see these. And here's where our one of our motor mounts goes, and here's the rear mount. So the main thing is we need to get enough stuff up here where we can get to these and get this thing separated. So we're going to go ahead and work on draining some coolant, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so we just took the hose loose from the radiator, got it draining there. Just getting ready to take this hose off. We'll just probably put it up here out of the way for now. And we're just going to keep on disconnecting. We've got, like I said, several hoses. It's not a bad idea to go ahead and label some of this stuff. This is where the thermostat housing goes in. We're going to disconnect it probably right here. Just disconnect this band and pull this out of the way, but we got to get a few more of these other connections. So it's not a bad idea to label if you need to, so you don't get confused when going back together with this. Okay, disconnected these hoses. Like I said, there's a bunch of them here. You need to use a little screwdriver to kind of get under some of these and work them loose, because they glue themselves from being so hot. This is the vent tube for the transmission that fastens right there. Just took that loose. Fixing to get this wire connector right here. Disconnect that. And now I'm going to get to this clamp here. So I took the clamp off here. I'm pulling this out, and then I'm going to take that one loose and just pull. Getting ready to take this assembly off of here. I may have another connector or a clamp. We'll see here. Okay, actually with that clamp pushed back, this is loose now. We can take and remove this whole piece and just set it aside. So now we're just gonna see what else we need to disconnect here. Looks like this tube's not doing much good. It's really brittle. Okay, move these hoses back. Just pay attention to where they go. So I disconnected from the throttle housing and just been disconnecting the hoses here. A few connectors. Getting ready to do this gas connection here. It's got a red clip. Flip that down, and they're going to take and push this thing back like so. Push that back up to release it. See how it's releasing. Now get a rag in case you got pressure on here, if you haven't released the pressure yet. Okay, so you have to have that pushed up about like that before it will come off there. So it has to fully unlock. So it just goes down, it pushes down and just locks around that. And unless this is pushed up, it won't allow it to So you got to pull that back, push it up completely, and when you go back to relock it, you just do opposite, and then this will lock back down and pull that completely down on there. Okay, this little housing right here had a couple of these 10 millimeters holding it right there. We just remove those. You just give this thing a twist and it'll pop out of there. It's got an O-ring that goes right up in there. So we're just going to set that out of the side, set that aside as well. And I think we've got everything pretty much. You can see this bolt, and then you can see the one down there. Now I'm fixing to go ahead and take this starter here out as well, and we've just got a couple of bolts. Got one up here, and then we've got another one that's going through the back. Let me show you if I can. Yeah, so right down there is the one in the back. So we just need to get those two bolts and we'll have that clear. Okay, so here's our starter bolts that are holding that down. We also have a wire connected to it. Maybe we can pull it up here. I can show you. Alright. So we've got it loose here. We got this, we gotta be careful around our, we got this right here that we need to get on. I believe that is going to be a 13 as well. Yeah, so we just need to get that loose. And then we've got, looks like another 10 millimeter right there. So we'll get both of those, and then we'll slip this off of the starter here. Okay, so just getting ready to slip this off of here now. We got this starter completely loose. You see it's got some locating pins on the bottom of it there. It's a 1/4 inch, looks like. Okay, so these, we're going to start getting some of these harnesses up off here. With these, you just pull it that way and it just slips off. And so all these just pull up, just slip it off. We're going to get all these unclipped and loose. And so we've got 10 right down here. We're going to disconnect that and just, you know, take note of where stuff is going and where it, so you get it routed back the same. But we just need to get some stuff out of the way and disconnected here that's going to get in the way. We got this connector here. We need to go ahead and get it back out of the way. So I'm going to work on these wires at the moment, moving them, and I think after we do that, I believe we're ready to get started on I'm going to start actually working on splitting this transmission off of here. We do have some mounts here as well. So we're just going to have to take this one at a time. We got the front and the back, and got this mount over here, so we're going to have to also make sure that we get the engine supported before we just go to taking everything loose here. Okay, so we took this with a 10 millimeter, disconnected it here. We've got a 10 right here, and then that frees up this whole thing. We can pull this back. We've got a few more connections, but we can pull that back out of the way there. So just take your cover off your box to get to that. Okay, I just disconnected the O2 sensor connectors. They were clipped down there like on that mount, and now this is completely loose here. So we're just going to fold it all back. Oh, we do have a clip right here. You take a flat and just push this spring back out. Be careful, it will try to fly off on you. Pull that completely off of there. That thing. With that up, it'll just pull right off of there. Okay, I was working on taking this shifter cable. There's a couple of tins holding that. Go in right here. We just took that loose. Now this part right here, just pop that off down there. You can see that little nub. Just pop it off with a screwdriver. Just comes right off your shifter down there. So that's free. I'm going to stick this back up here out of the way. Now there is a little, take a little screwdriver right here. Pop this little clamp off. And that will free that up completely right here. Just get in there and pop that loose. Said sometimes it's a chore trying to figure out how to not break something. But there that is. It's completely freed up. We'll just flop it over there out of the way. So we got that. Now I'm just getting ready to get this ground right here. It's 10 millimeter. This connect to the starter. Now it connects up here, but I don't need to take it loose up here. I'm just going to pull it back over here out of the way once I get that ground there loose. Okay, now I'm over here. I've got a 15, and I'm just getting under here working on this front mount bolt you see right there. We're going to take and get this thing completely out. It has a welded nut on the other side, so you don't have to hold this. So we're going to just take and this thing may be in a bind a little bit once it's loose. We may have to wiggle it out of there, and then we're going to work on this brace, getting this brace out. Okay, I'm back here at the back of this cross brace. This is a 21. I'm going to go ahead and take that out first, and then I'll work on the upper ones that'll be held up by this. Okay, so there we have that loose. So that's a 21 millimeter nut. It looks like we're going to have to remove this anyway before we can even get that to drop down. So we'll probably go ahead and get on this. We got a couple of bolts. There's 2 of them on each side. We'll just go ahead and get those out. Okay, so we got that cross brace down out of the way there. That was 15 millimeters holding that, 2 on each side. So now we're going to go ahead and get back up here into the front and just remove these 2. Right here, I believe these are 15s as well. Okay, and there that is out of the way. And it's a lot easier to get up here and see what's going on. And there's those bolts. Hold that up there. And then the nut that goes onto the back, and that just drops down with that bolt out of the way, drops that whole mount down out of your way. And I think we may take that bracket off for clearance as well, but we'll see. But we can definitely see more about what's going on here. Now anyways, we've got the engine supported, and we've got some transmission lines here that we're going to have to get disconnected, and we'll want to plug those off so they're not dripping. We'll just disconnect them here and here, so we're going to do that next. Okay, right now I just got those transmission cooler lines, stuck some bolts in them, just got them stuck there. I think I'm going to go ahead. I've got some 13s, got 2 up here and 1 down the bottom of this bracket. I'm going to take this bracket off just to allow for a little bit more clearance when I go to wiggling this thing around. So I'm going to do that next, and then I'm going to see about getting a getting my chain, figuring out a lift point here for my lift, and then I'll work on that back. I've got the back mount. If you come through the passenger side with a long extension, we'll get to that bolt. I think that will be fine, but it may get in the way. I may have to take this bracket off as well, and so I may just go ahead and plan on doing that. It's a little bit tight to get in here and remove some of this stuff, but it kind of needs to be done. So I'm going to do that, and then once I get this bracket and get this back one, we may go ahead and do that before we get the lift. Get this back one, then we'll work on this one here once we get it supported. Okay, I completely removed that bracket right there with those 3 bolts. I'm just getting ready to get under here to get to this back mount, and you need to come underneath here. There's just, it's really hard to see this thing, but if you come back here, we can get to that bolt right there. You can see that 15. We're just going to use a little extended handle ratchet and break this loose, and it is pretty snug. And once I get this bolt out, I'm going to go ahead and get the other bolts that are holding it to the transmission here, just to clear that out of the way. Okay, I'm utilizing a extension here with a swivel on it to get down to that one, and once you get them broke loose, they come really easy. Now the one that's down in here is actually right underneath this, so I'm going to attempt to get back there with a 15mm ratchet wrench and break that loose and see if I can get that bolt out, because I really don't want to have to remove this back here if I don't have to. It's just going to be more work on that, and it's kind of difficult to get to that in itself. So I got these first 2 here though. Okay, there's those 3 bolts, and I've got it completely loose here. And like I said, once you get them just broken loose, you can get them out of there with your fingers very easily. So I think we're going to go ahead and loosen up our lower transmission bolts before I go any farther. Get the ones I can get are down lower. I can see them all, so I can get to them. We're going to go work on the lower ones down here, and then we're going to rig up our lift somehow here, and we're going to then take this one loose, and we're going to start trying to separate this and wiggle it around. I think I've got enough room, because I can come this way, and we'll just engine, we've just got one mount. We got this mount right up here, but it's going to give us some wiggle room. And matter of fact, I can loosen this bolt up here if I wanted to, and allow for some more slack if need be. But I've got room with this loose. I can move it around. So we're going to get on the lower bolts here on the transmission. Okay, this dipstick's being held on by a little 8mm that was going through here, and I've just pulled it up and out of there. It's not very hard. Pull it up out of there. This has like a rubber little seal there. So I know that was going to get in the way, so we went ahead and removed that. Okay, down here, took out the 2 lower bolts. Got a bolt here. There's one directly on the back, the boat side over there. This one here, you need an 18 to remove this nut, and this other one is a 15. So you just hold that while you get the other one loose, and then that stud comes out. Okay, so there's that, and you can take that off of that side, and you got this pipe here in the way, so you have to kind of remove that while you hold this. A 1/4 inch socket works pretty good for holding the end of that stud, by the way. Okay, with that off, we can go ahead and just remove that whole stud. So we've got 2 of the lowers, and then we got this stud here out of the way, and we've got another one we'll get underneath here to get. Okay, I'm back here behind where the CV axle goes on the passenger side. I'm just getting this one upper 13 millimeter. I've got the other ones, and just working this one here out. And we still got the bolts up top. This is not going to just come apart. Once I get this one here out, I'll have all these lower bolts. It'll just leave the uppers. And we're going to get, like I said, rig up a chain. I'm going to get my lift over here, and we're going to rig up a chain with some slack, and we're going to get a hold of this. And we've already, like I said, we got the engine supported. So once we get the lift on here, we'll go ahead and remove the last engine mount over there, our transmission mount. Okay, I'm going ahead and removing this bracket here, the battery tray. There's just a few of these 10 millimeters. There should be some down there. Those are missing, however, so we just have the ones up here. So we're just going to remove these 2 and move this bracket out of the way. Okay, I just want to give you a visual of the bolts I've taken out so far. So these are 13 millimeters. We just took these 2 basically on the bottom, this little stud bolt, and then this one here, which leaves us with these up top that we have left. They're easy to get to from the top, and they also come from this side here. So the other ones, that's that studded bolt. So that's the 4 that we've taken out, and we're just going to get up top and remove these. And I've already got a chain rigged up. I'll just put a washer, put the chain down on there, and I've just allowed enough slack. I'm going to hook onto this where I can lower it down, so I've got enough slack. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to get the lift over here, get a hold of it. So the engine's being supported, but once I get the lift on it, I'm going to go ahead and take this off. The idea is I'm going to wiggle the engine around a little bit to get enough slack to kind of do what I need to do, and we're going to go ahead and take the remainder of the bolts out, and we're just going to carefully separate these here. And like I said, anytime you're separating, you want to make sure the torque converter stays in the transmission. It doesn't pull off, because sometimes it'll try to pull off with the flex plate. Okay, I removed the hood prop there. Just put some cardboard to protect the hood. We just got a slight bit of tension on it here. We're going to go ahead and get on this 15, remove this. We got it supported well enough, it's not going to go anywhere. And then I think once we, well, actually I'm going to go ahead and work on the removal of these bolts here first, and then we'll get this one here because it'll still be held in place. So we'll get this one down here first. It's a little bit more difficult to get to, that 13, and then we'll get over and get that lower one, and then we'll just get these top 2 right here. Okay, I'm using a long extension with a swivel with 13 millimeter, and it's working pretty good. I'm just getting at it because it's kind of difficult to get to down in there behind all this water pump and everything. Okay, make sure to mark your bolts. That one over here is shorter than this one. All of them are like different lengths. So we just got these 2 left, here and here, these 13s. I'm going to go ahead and get those out. We've got it supported, and then we'll work on getting the mount bolt. There's the last 2 out, You can see it's still being held by the engine and the torque converter and everything because it's so tight, but it's also got alignment pins. But we're going to go ahead and remove this here, and we'll make sure to be cautious and everything. Okay, we just got the big motor mount bolt that was coming through here and remove that. We got a little bit of tension on here. Okay, I've carefully lowered my lift a little bit, and you can see we're already starting to separate here. And there's not a lot of room, but I believe we will have room to get it here. I just need to get it down a little bit lower. So we're going to just lower it down a little bit more. Okay, to allow wiggle room, I've took the 4 13 millimeters out of this mount. It's got one on each side and then the 2 on the top. So I just took those completely out so we can lift that out of the way. And now I can swing this around a little bit better and work on separating it. And I can also take my jack and go up with the engine a little bit if I need to here. Okay, I've got it free here. As you can see, it is a pretty tight squeeze. One thing I wish that my jack hadn't have been down there. I had it positioned in a different area. So it's a pretty tight squeeze. So going back in, I don't know that I might go ahead and take the mount loose over here and figure out how to scoot that over just a little bit and support it, just to make things a little easy, because it is a pretty tight fit. So I'm not going to hurt this one any, but I don't want to take a chance going back in. So I'm just basically going to wiggle it on out here and set it down on the ground for now. Okay, it is plenty doable, but it is a tight fit, and what I've had to do is push and pull this transmission forward a little bit. As you can see, the problem is the subframe back here, so I'm having to clear that back there and hitting on the sub. So I'm pulling this forward as I'm lowering it, and now you can see I'm low enough where I can go under this now. And I jacked up the engine slightly, not a lot. I jacked it up a little bit there, but I've just about got it. But I think, I don't know, we'll see, but I may just go ahead and move the engine over a little bit, putting this back to make it a little easier. Okay, you can see here we're almost home free. I wish that my jack hadn't been in the way, but we're going to go ahead and set it down here. If I can get it on some cardboard preferably, it'll make it easier to slide out, but we've got it down past that back there, and I'm ready just to set it on down here at this point. Okay, and there we are on the ground, all sitting down there, and we can just drag it out from under here. So if you set it down on some cardboard, it makes it way easier, or if you have a little cart to set it down on, a dolly, it'll make it a little bit easier on you. But there we are. Now it's just a matter of wiggling the other one up into place. And I said I could do it without moving the engine, but it wouldn't be just another step to take that mount loose over, and I can scoot it over a little bit, probably a couple 3 inches, and that's just going to make things a little bit easier for me. So you know, getting something out's one thing, putting it back usually a little bit more difficult if you have limited room. So I think I'm going to do it that way just because it's such a tight fit. But coming out, it's like, it's no problem. You can wiggle this thing around and miss that subframe there. So I'm just going to drag it out now and get to work on getting the other one over here, swapping some stuff over, and so I'll figure out something as far as supporting this engine and getting some supports or something under here so I can get a little bit more room. You see, I can scoot this over a little bit more. I know the alternator back there will hit before anything, but I've got a little bit of room, and if I could just take this bolt out, I could probably slide it over enough to give me some more room here. Okay, I'm just over here doing a quick comparison. So far I've like not seen any difference in this. Notice I put all the bolts where they go, where they come out of for the bell housing, but everything looks the same. I said build date 3/10/05 for this transmission, yet it looks exactly the same, so I don't understand what the difference is. Looking at them here, they don't look any different to me. They appear to be identical. As far as I know, the 01 to 06 are supposed to be all the same transmission. I figured there might be a sensor or something that was different on here, but I'm not seeing anything that looks different. So that's just the information that I got, and said from my research I couldn't find any difference in it. But I don't know if I'd mentioned, but I got this transmission for like $400. It's a really good deal for this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it down here on some cardboard. We're just gonna slide it back under. I just slid that one out very easily with some cardboard, and I'm just gonna slide this one back under. Said I'm gonna go ahead and take this bolt out, and it'll stop it up here, but I'm also going to support it under the engine. But I need to move this jack where I can manipulate my lift and stuff a little bit better. So I may do that here. Okay, we're getting ready to put a new CV axle seal in here. We're going to have to do both sides, but they only had one, had to order the other. So I'm going to do the most difficult one to get to, that would be most difficult in the vehicle, which is this one right here, the passenger side. So first thing, you got this protective deal here, and I just popped that thing off. Don't even know that I'll put it back on. I might, but you got to be careful getting this out. This has well, you can see how that just kind of Loctites itself in there. It's a pressed fit, so I have to get this out of there, you know, but don't hit the side and damage that. You'll get it leaking. So you just have to work with this thing and pry it out of there. You could also get under this lip, but I'm going to work from the inside with a pry bar and try to work it loose here. Okay, so I just pried it out of there without too much difficulty, but unfortunately I did put a scratch, as you can see right there, a small scratch. So I'm going to have to put a little bit of RTV around this or I'm going to be hating life. So I'm going to clean that up and put a little RTV before I pound this on there. But it's a nice tight fit. I doubt much would leak, but it would leak because it that fluid, any place it can find, it'll go out. Okay, so I run some gray RTV just all around it, and the way I like to knock these on, I just take a block wood or a 2x4, and I'll just kind of hit it nice and straight. So just get it on there like that, and just hit it out here on this end, and just knock it on there nice and straight. That's usually enough to do it. Okay, and there we are, nice and flush on there. And we'll take and put some transmission fluid around this seal before we put our CV axle. It's a good time to do it now while you're thinking about it. I'm just going to take this and push this back on as well. It just slides right in there. I guess it's kind of a protective cover. Okay, now these CV axle seals are the same, I guess, for both sides. And there's that part number. but these are only like 13 something a piece, so pretty inexpensive. Okay, I just took this 18mm bolt out, and that's going to allow me to scoot this over a little bit. Now I've got some blocks and stuff under here, and also got my jack. Basically it's being supported by the blocks and the jack, and I want to slide it that way. That's going to make it a little bit easier for me coming back in. Like I said, I could have put my lift on here, but it'd be another extra step, and I'd have to get it attached and everything to move it. So I think I can just slide it over with this. Okay, I moved a few things over, and I've got the replacement on cardboard here. I tried to move this engine over, and I don't think I moved it absolutely any, so don't waste your time with that. It just simply, with the exhaust and everything hooked up, it has no wiggle room whatsoever. So we're just gonna, I mean, it came out, so we're gonna go back in with it kind of like we came out. We'll just be careful, put a piece of cardboard in here to kind of protect a little bit, and just take our time with it. One thing we'll want to do is take a file, make sure we don't have any burrs or anything before we get going here. But yeah, I wasted a lot of time trying to move that over, and it didn't work at all. So just getting ready to slide this under. I've got it on some cardboard, and I've got the chain on there and everything into place, and we're gonna just work it back up in there. Okay, I've got it slid out of there good enough. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get my lift and just hook on to it and start pulling it up here. Okay, make sure that you got the studs on your torque converter where they're going to line up with the holes on the flex plate there. Okay, like I said, I put a piece of cardboard in there, and I'm just carefully working it up. You have room, you just have to kind of start off up this way and kind of wiggle it and manhandle it a little bit, but it's not very heavy, and it's pretty easy to kind of work around. And the main thing is getting up above this back here, and then it can slide back. So I'm just going to continue lifting on up. Just, you know, take your time carefully, make sure you're not going to hit or damage anything. Okay, when I was coming out, the back end, you know, was the hardest thing to clear. I had to take a jack and go under here and push this up higher because it's kind of in the center, and I needed this to actually lift up higher than this part. It might actually be better to hook on back here when going in, because I needed to get above that. So I had to take a jack and just push it up a little bit above that. And now that's clear, I can come on up with it here. Okay, a matter of getting your lift into the best position possible makes it a lot easier when lifting this up. Like I said, it is a tight fit. And I clipped my water pump here coming out, so I'll have to fix that. I broke the hose there. It was just one of those things, you got to be very careful. So I'll have to hunt one of these down and figure out what I'm going to do about that. But anyways, you can see we've about got it in position, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the cardboard there now. Okay, with it up here, I'm going to try to get like one bolt, maybe hand tighten on the start, just to keep it from falling back down, and then we'll worry about lining up our alignment dowels there, because I just don't want it to pop back out of location. So I'm going to try to at least get one of these up here. You can see that I'm pretty well lined up, but it's not at the right angle here. Yeah, like I said, just get them started with your hand. If you can't start it with your hand, then wiggle it around and try it again. So don't do it with a wrench, or it will strip and mess your threads up, because it's not lined up exactly straight right now. But you want to try to get one or two just to hold it in place while you work the rest in. Okay, now another thing we're going to have to check for is to make sure that our studs are lined up. And the only way to do that is to come under here and take a look. And I can't see the stud. It should be in that area, so we may have to rotate the crank here till we can get it lined up, because we won't be able to push it together or do anything without the studs lined up. Okay, one thing you can do with this starter out is look right in here for your hole. And I don't know if you can see the hole down there, but I'm nowhere even close to it. I don't know why. I thought they were lined up, but they're not. So I've got to rotate that flywheel back around clockwise till it lines up with that, because it's not even close. Okay, so now you can see that the stud's lined up with it, so I can go ahead and push this together now. Okay, now you can tell that it's going together well. The alignment dowels are into place. So all we got to do now is just work all of our bolts in, and you should be able to just hand tighten them in if they're lined up for the most part. But I just started with these top two because it was easiest at the angle that I had. Now I will say that it's not real easy getting this transmission wheeled in here, but you can do it if you take your time. But you know, you figure it would probably take me a lot longer to take the entire engine out and everything and do all that work, plus disconnecting all that extra stuff. So I think this is a pretty good alternative to that. So it's just a matter of, you know, wiggling it in there and fighting with it a little bit to get it to clear the subframe. Now you could drop that stuff back there and it'd make it even easier for you. Okay, so I just took and finished snugging all those bolts down there, and that's going to do it for the night. It's getting dark. We're going to go ahead and torque those down and get back on it in the morning. We'll torque them down to 35 foot-pounds, but we got all the bolts in and they're snugged down, so that's good. Right, one last thing before I call it a night. I'm just going to put this bolt back into this mount. Just slipped it back on the bracket. Put the two bolts here. Two bolts in the side here. Very easy. And then I can get my lift out of the way here for the night. Okay, so I just finished torquing these down to 35 foot-pounds. The most difficult one I couldn't get my torque wrench was this one right down here, and I just just went by feel with that. So I think the next thing we're going to work on is go ahead and reattach our rear mount and our front mount, and then we'll start working on reconnecting some of this other stuff. And we're going to have to also pull this pump off of here because this got broke, and putting this on, so has a stretch belt, so we have to either pull it off of there or take these bolts out to release the tension to get that off of there. Okay, here's our bolts and this bracket that goes on that rear mount. You remember we took that out so we'd have room, or more room, to manipulate this thing around. So we just gotta, what we'll do is we'll get the big bolt, go underneath and get it going in first. It'll be easier to get that bolt in there, and then we'll start putting the bolts into the transmission. So we're gonna go ahead and go underneath and take our big bolt that we got under there and get it into place. Okay, so we're just gonna get under here and get this started. It's pretty easy to get it started with the other part loose. And I just got to get it into position here a little bit. So I'm going to need my other hand. Okay, like I said, very easy to thread it in all the way by hand without any tension on it. Now I'm going to just leave it a little bit loose for now until I get the bolts. I just threaded it in, and I'm going to go up and work on the bolts up there, so I want to have a little bit of slack, and we'll get those in alignment and go ahead and tighten those down, and we'll come back and tighten this. Okay, so I started those in there by hand, and they go really easy. Now the most difficult one is the one under there, but I used the ratchet wrench last time, and then we'll just tighten it down. You can see these are going in really easy. I put a little bit of Loctite just for good measure, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten those down, and then we'll get underneath, finish tightening that big bolt, and then we'll work on this one up here next. Okay, so I just got under there and tightened the big bolt going through and the bolts going into the transmission. Now the one that's down there underneath this, I just used a regular wrench and just kind of doubled them up to get that nice and snug, because you can't really fit a socket or torque in there unless you're using the little crowfoot's attachment to torque it or anything. But a lot of these I'm just getting them really good and tight, not worrying about the torque. So we're going to go ahead and get up here onto this front one now, and go ahead and get that attached. Another thing that we do have to do is get our CVs in. We may go ahead and do that at this point, because I'm going to have to get this brace in and everything, and I may go ahead and do these CV axles before I do that. So we'll start on this side over here. Remember, we already put us a new seal onto this side, but we still got to replace the seal on that other side. You've seen how I done this one, so I'm just going to go underneath and get the other one. It'll be a little bit more difficult with it in there, but I can still get up there and get to it. And I'm just going to pop it out and put another one in. Okay, I was mistaken. It was the passenger, the difficult one, I'd replaced. This is the one that I left to get to. So I've got my other seal, and I'm just going to use that little pry bar and pop this one out. Okay, and I just used a long 2x4 to get out here and knock that in there. I just cleaned this off, and we made sure we put some transmission fluid around that seal, and just getting ready to slide this in. And we'll just get out here. Once we get it in there far enough, pushed up in, we will take and pound it in the rest of the way with our rubber mallet by hitting it out here on this end. Just give it a couple good hits while you hold this by hand. Okay, I'm just getting ready to put this longer one in now. Remember, we're going to go through here with it, and we got the bracket that has to attach that right there. Bolts on, so we left those there so we didn't lose them. So we're going to go through there, and it just slides right into place. There's no clip on here, so you just push it right into place. Okay, so we got this slid on there and the little dust shield on those studs. So we're going to go ahead and replace our 13 millimeters now. And it's, like I said, it's slid up in there. You have to kind of guide that with your other hand when you're lining this up. And once this is on here, you know you got it far enough. Okay, with the CV axles back in, we're going to go ahead and slide these back into the knuckle. Now I've got some white lithium grease I'm going to spray onto these splines in here a little bit before I put that in. Just keeps them from seizing up, and you can get it apart a lot easier. Now I'm going to be having to come back in here. These control arms, see the ball joints, just no good. The tie rods are wore out, so I'm going to have to come back in here and replace all this stuff. So I'm going to be back in here anyways, but I want to, get this thing running enough for now. So the first thing we're going to do is spray this and just slip this back into place here. We'll push it back up on to our strut. Okay, and there's that. We're just going to replace this. And I'm just going to be tightening everything down, impact, and getting everything really good and tight. So if you wiggle this around, you can just slide, you should be able to slide those bolts right into place. You just kind of have to wiggle the strut and the knuckle to get them lined up. So We'll go ahead and tighten this down. We're going to tighten these, and then we'll get our rotor back on here. Oh, and another thing before I forget, I'm using a 32 on this. Now I tried an 1.25" and a 32. Neither one are like really tight, so I'm thinking this is like a 31. And as you know, 31s don't come with any size unless you special order one. But the 32 will get the job done. Okay, using an 18 and then holding it with an 18 wrench on this side. Okay, we got that on. We're going to go ahead and get our brake caliper, so the whole assembly's together. So we're just going to slide it on there and reattach the main bracket. Now if you don't torque these, just get these really tight. It's a big bolt. I want to say it's like 130 foot-pounds or something, but the main thing, just get it really tight. Right in here we got the caliper tightened back down really good. So at this point, I'm leaving the shroud off for now. I'm going to put that on later. We're going to go ahead and just slap the tire on over here. Well, we got to get our ABS and stuff back in, but I was getting ahead of myself. Once we get this here, we'll be about finished up. Remember, this just goes up here on this little bolt, and then it just slips right back down in there. So I'll leave all of the bolts where they go. This gets a little clip. I'm not going to worry about that clip right now because I'm going to be replacing these. You can see it's cracked. I've got some on the way ordered right now, and I'm going to be replacing these. It's definitely dangerous. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten that, and we're going to get this slipped back into here. Okay, so there we have that, 8mm and a 10mm. Okay, there we got our wheel on, and we're going to torque those to 100 foot-pounds. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, and I'll be leaving this wheel cap out for now. So we're just going to do the same thing, put the other wheel and CV and everything on. Okay, before I put the wheel on over here, remember the little cover that we took off of the alternator here? This little useless cover. I'm getting ready to put the 8mm back in there. It's got an extension here, and that'll probably be enough to hold it. I'm not going to worry about that other little snap. Okay, now one thing, we got some connectors that run down here to this transmission. You see the one way down there we have to connect, and there's one out here actually in the fender well, and I should have put that on before I put the tire on over here, but I can still get to it. And this little clip clips right onto here. You can see it's right here, just clips right back onto there, and I said that one goes down there. Okay, you can reach down in here and get to the both of these fairly easy, just reaching. So I think we're gonna go ahead, so I had to run some new, this is like 7/32, I think what it said, because the one that was on here was completely rotted, deteriorated, so I had to get some of that. It's just some universal hose from the parts store. It's really cheap. I think we're going to go ahead, so we got rear mount. We maybe go ahead and put the starter back on there, get it bolted down, get our shifter cable back up here. It mounts right here. So we've just got everything pushed up over here out of the way. It's just a matter of just reconnecting some of this stuff here. We want to try to reconnect, you know, things in order, so we're not having to go back and take something to put something else. Okay, so we just got that set on there. It just snaps right back onto the shifter, and we're just tightening these bolts down. We got it routed right through here. We have a ground wire that goes right here. Okay, we got the starter in place. Remember, it's got the location dowels, little pins, 1/4 inch pins or 3/8 or whatever in the back there that help locate it. We're just going to tighten these 13 millimeters down now. Then we'll get our connector on. Lastly, okay, I'm getting ready to slip this dipstick back down in here, and it has a spot right there for the bolt. We're probably going to need to get underneath to see what's going on here. Okay, I found out after crawling under there it's easier to slip the rubber piece that's on that dipstick into the transmission before slipping the actual metal part of the dipstick. Now I've got this 8mm that's going right into the side of this, and you can just feel down in there and get it started by hand. It just goes right into the side and holds that dipstick in place. Another thing, make sure you put the dipstick in between this and this tube. That's the location. It also has a little clip thing right here that goes on that. That's how you'll know if you got it into the right location. And then that just snaps on there like that. That's how that goes. Okay, I went ahead and switched over to removing this pump, and I've got a pan down there. I assume there's going to be more coolant in here, and there's only 3 8mm actually holding this. You see the ones that are loose right there, and there's one up here on the top, and you can kind of see because they go into the block there, and then we've got another one that's right down here. Now after you just loosen a few of these up, this is plenty loose enough, you can just slip this belt right off. And this is a stretch belt, but it's just not crazy tight or anything. And we'll put it back on the same way. We'll just start one of these little bolts and we'll get the other ones into place. You can see that's the longer of the bolts, and we just got a couple more right here, and then this thing will be loose. So there's all those that are holding this. You can see you can easily lift up. See, I've got some coolant going down there. I can easily just pop that up and off there. The belt looks pretty good. So we've got this hose right here that's still attached, and I'm debating on which one's going to be easier to remove it here and simply put it back onto the new pump when I get it, or just remove it here. But yes, that little plastic piece is the weak point in this whole pump, and I just happened to bump it enough, and it's probably fragile enough to break very easily. Now the good thing about replacing it this way is that you get the whole thing took care of. If you replace this whole unit, or you don't have to take this and worry with the gasket and resealing it and all that stuff. Really, to me, buying this housing is the way to go, because you can just take the 3 bolts, bolt it on there, and hook it up to your hose, and you're in business. You don't have to fuss with the gasket and all that, cleaning that up. But so I got it on Amazon. I'll leave a link. It's for this pump. It was like $32, so pretty good bargain. So I'm going to just finish. I think I'm going to try to remove this clamp right here. That way it may be easier when putting it back on. So I'm just going to push that back, and you just have to take a screwdriver, get in under a small tiny screwdriver, and break the seal of these hoses loose, and then you can just twist them and get them right on off. Okay, this actually slipped off of that hose really easily, surprised me. This was already disconnected. We disconnected those coolant lines earlier. So here it is, and here's the cheap little plastic piece that broke off. Now I will say that these clamps are no joke. Like, they're very hard to compress and to move and to get them to move on the line. And may just go back with some screw type on this one even, because it was like basically didn't want to even slide back. I had to squeeze it and it come off really easily, but this thing's got so much pressure on it that I couldn't even get it to slide back up onto the hose. So you know, putting it back on, I'd have to do it the same way, I would imagine. I'd have to push it up there and just squeeze this, because I couldn't even slide it back. It's a really, really strong clamp. So taking it loose here is definitely the easiest. So I got that out of the way. I'm waiting on my pump. So I'm going to try to just connect a few more things here that I can without getting a lot of stuff in my way when I go to putting this pump back, because I'm going to have to leave some room for that. Okay, I'm just getting this battery cable wire and starter wire back over here. It's got a little place right down here where it clips onto. And this runs down here for the ground. I think it was run, looks like it may have been run in under here, so I'm going to have to unclip this here and reroute this. Okay, so just slide your wires underneath there. There's room even with this on here. I slid the wires through here and just tucked them underneath the starter. See how they're oriented, and then that little ground wire hooks back from underneath, so they should go on there like that. And we'll get the two nuts on here, and then we'll tighten that 10mm for that ground, and then like I said, it clips right here. Okay, just tightening this 13 and this 10 with this little small micro ratchet. Fits in there the best. We're going to go ahead and push this back into place. It just goes right in that hole right there. It's got that O-ring on it. It doesn't hurt to put a little clean coolant or some kind of lubrication to get it to go back in easily. And we got these two 10mm that bolted on there. So we're going to go ahead and lock this down. Okay, I've just moved this harness back over here. You can kind of see where it goes. I've got this little clip here that goes onto this piece. And this is about the extent that I'm going to be able to do without getting too much stuff in my way while I'm waiting on the water pump. We slide that down there, and we get under there and we slide that clip that goes from the front there, I believe. Okay, on that little clip, just slide it on the connector before you pop it down on there. That's the way that you're supposed to do it. So we got this that routes over here. It's being held in by a 10. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up. And then we've got a spot here in the box that we're going to reconnect. Okay, I'm just reconnecting this one right here in the box. And we'll tighten that 10mm down. Okay, I'm just going to push this on here. If these get in the way, I'm going to simply take them back off. But I think so this is about the extent of everything I can do at this point without just getting everything completely in the way here. And so we're just going to This connector doesn't appear to be locking in place. Okay, so we've got some O2 sensors here. They kind of connect to the bracket there, which I think I'm going to leave that out for the moment, just in case. Like I said, you don't have a whole lot of room over here with this pump, so I kind of want to just leave some stuff out for now. I've got the gas line out still. Of course, all these hoses, there's hoses and stuff going everywhere, and it makes it just almost impossible to get to anything up here. Now I've got a connector somewhere that goes here. I'm going to check. Okay, there we go. I found it. I had it pushed up here. So like I said, I think this is all I'm going to be able to do to this here for now. I may be able to go ahead and get my brace on, and but we're going to go ahead. I hadn't even put the torque converter nuts on to bolt the flywheel, so I guess we'll go ahead and do that now. Get back underneath the car. Okay, so I've got my 18 with my extended ratchet on the crank there. And we're just going to rotate it. I'm going to peer right in through here until we get it where we can see the stud. Okay, so there is the first one. Okay, there I got some light now. You can see it. We just got the first one. We're just going to go through these one at a time. These are self-locking, so you don't have to worry about that. And we're just going to snug them down. I like to get them all just started before I go back, and I'll go back and tighten them all at the same time. Okay, so I got my torque wrench set to 25 foot-pounds. These are just a small little nut, so if you're going to torque them, you don't want to go much more than 25 on these. And you'll have to also hold this out here to keep it from spinning while you tighten this. Okay, so we got those 4 torqued down to 25 foot-pounds, and we're just going to replace this little rubber piece here and put the little clips through these little holes. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put this brace across through here. We've got the 2 15s that go up here in the front. It's got the mount on there. Already we've got a 21 nut that goes right back there. So we're going to go ahead and just stick this up into place and get these braces back up here. I think they're not going to get in my way. And I went ahead and I just pushed these O2 sensors back together and got them clipped, and probably going to put this brace in. I'm going to go ahead and get that transmission line and connect it here, and this one just goes right over here, and that's my bolt for my mount up here that I had just plugging that off. So then we're going to go ahead and try to at least get these transmission lines, and we'll get this up here. Okay, so here we have this brace back into place, and we also replaced this cross member piece right here, and we're just going to reconnect this to that up there and then get the other one. Okay, there we got the lines. It's got this one and this one right up here reconnected to the transmission. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put my bracket for this mount. Just set it back in there. And we're going to get the big bolt going through this part, the cylinder part first, and then we'll worry about lining it up with the engine and getting it where we need it. And you can see it has the mounts up here for these clips for the O2 sensors. So those mount on top of that. And this thing just kind of goes to the side here in a little hole. So those will go on there. So I'm going to get that big bolt put through there. Okay, I actually got ahead of myself. There's a bolt on this bracket that goes underneath here that you can't access. So make sure to put the bracket on absolutely first before you put the mount in place. Don't do what I did, because there's a bolt hiding right under there, and they make it so you have to put this on bracket on first before. If you got that mount in there, you can't get to that bolt. So I had to drop this back down and move that mount so I can get to this other bolt. Not a big deal. Okay, and here I am tightening this sneaky hidden bolt under here. Okay, so we got that bolt in there and got that back on, and we just went ahead and clipped these wires for the O2 sensors right into their spots, and then clipped that little wire right into the side right there. Okay, so we'll get back on it as soon as I get my water pump in. I'm just going to leave everything else out. It'll be, you know, impossible to get that pump in if we go to putting a lot of stuff up here back on. So we'll get back on as soon as I get the pump. Okay, we got our water pump in here. Usually if I don't go with the OEM, I'll use Gates. We'll pretty much only use Gates aftermarket. Had good success with these, but I've had failures with others, so this is pretty much all I use now. So we're just getting ready to put this on, and we're going to go ahead and stick this hose back on, and we'll stick this little piece back on here, and then we'll just come up here and connect this one. And as you can see, we just got the 3 bolts to put in here, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to fool with the gasket or anything when doing it for this assembly. So we'll put the belt on as we're putting the bolts in, but the first thing I'm going to do is put this hose on here and this little piece on here, and this is the part that I clipped, and it's just very easy to break that. Okay, I got my hoses on here. This hose is probably going to need replaced soon because it's getting really thin. The clamp that was on there didn't even tighten it up, so it may have very well been leaking. So but those you can't just find anywhere, so I'll have to get one of those and come back and deal with that. But one good thing about this one, you can see right here, if you wanted to put the mechanical tensioner on there, you could. If you can get one from a salvage yard, you can just do away with this stretch belt. But the stretch belt's really not a big problem. We're just going to slip it on there as we're putting these bolts in, and it's really not a big deal. You know, it's just whatever you want to do. But you can, they make these, I guess these are for all years, so it'll work regardless. So I'm going to set it down here and make sure that this hose is in position. Actually, thought I had it marked, but I didn't. I want to make absolutely sure it's in a position before I go ahead and put some medium Loctite on those as well. Okay, I slipped this clamp back on. I just used some short pliers because it was probably better to leave this piece out because it's a little more difficult to get in here with the pliers. But I slipped that on. I was just pushing this housing while holding this clamp compressed and slipped it up on there. If I have any trouble, I'm going to come back with a screw clamp like this one because I didn't feel like this one was tight enough either. So I put that on there. So I'm going to go ahead and work on getting this belt, and we'll start these bolts in here now. But like I said, it's pretty simple to slip on there. It's just these clamps sometimes are good, sometimes they're not. Okay, just start your bolts and just, you know, be careful and make sure that you don't get them misaligned or anything. But it just, you can see it just pulls the tension right back on this belt, so it's really not a problem to tighten this one. You kind of want to snug this bolt here up first, because then as it tightens up, the belt kind of gets in the way a little bit, but you can still get to it. And we're going to go ahead and torque these, I think, to 89 inch-pounds. Like I said, I got a little Loctite on there, but it's actually pretty simple. I mean, the way this will go back, I mean, it's really not a big deal with a stretch belt, because you can just take it off. You can take the belt off this way, and you can put it right back on this way, and it just pulls itself right into place. And once the bolts are tightened up, it puts the tension right back on that belt again. And I don't see nothing wrong with this belt. You know, they recommend replacing them. They're like $13 or $14 if you want to do that while you're at it, but I don't see anything wrong with this one. It feels like it's got plenty of tension here. So we just got these three. We've got the one here, here, and then the one right here. I said you can push that belt a little enough to get to it and put the 89 inch-pounds on it. So we're going to go ahead and torque them, and then we'll get to work on reconnecting all these hoses. I did have to take this connector back off because it was just right in my way. So all I did was clamp this right here, or squeeze this with pliers when I was pushing this on. Pushed it right onto this. And as far as this one, I had this one backed off. This is the harder of the two to kind of squeeze, but I've got it on there now. I'm just going to slip this one up, and this one's already in place here, so we just have to slip that one back there, and we'll have this connected, and everything feels pretty snug. So don't forget your connectors and stuff. You make sure everything is connected here. So we're just working on getting stuff back on here and getting all these hoses, but it's really pretty simple. Okay, now back behind this, we're going to connect. We're coming through here like so. We're going to connect this to this right here and get that clamp on there. Okay, we get our connection here on this side of the throttle housing. Okay, now we got the one on the other side. Over here we need to push back on, and we'll get our clamp on that as well. Okay, we got our gas line. The connector's already pulled up. The white one goes down here. Snap that on. And then we got the red one here. Go ahead and snap that down. Okay, we're getting this big hose on right here. We got that screw clamp we're going to tighten down, and then we just got this one here. We're going to slip that right back down onto here. Okay, we pretty much got everything. We reconnected the hose down there to the radiator. It's easier to get underneath for that. We've got a bracket for this battery tray. We're going to go back. I'm going to get that in. There should be like 4 10mm. Mine only has 2 up on the top there though. But we've pretty much got it. So we didn't have a whole lot left except for the hoses, and we're going to work on going ahead and getting some fluids, getting our transmission filled. We'll probably get a gallon in for starters. I took a gallon and a half out, but we're going to put a gallon in, and we're going to kind of go from there and start checking it. We don't want to get it too full because it could have been, you know, overfilled previously. There's no telling, or we may have took out more than what you normally would, but I think they said 3.5 gallons is what you usually get out of them. So anyways, we'll go ahead and get this bracket in here. Okay, there's that bracket, and you have the 2 places to clip your wires onto right there as well. Okay, so we got our battery tray. We're just going to go ahead and get our breather box and stuff in here now. Alright, so we got the breather box. We're just getting ready to connect this here. We're going to go ahead. We got this connected. We pushed that back into there. We just left that attached. I'm going to tighten that screw down, and we'll start getting some fluids in here. Okay, I'm using this Mercon. It calls for Mercon. You can also use Mercon V in this. Okay, we're going to top off the coolant and everything, and fixing to fire it up. and we're just going to start running it through gears. So I've got a gallon in there. We're going to start running it through some gears, and then we'll keep a check on this, the level of the transmission fluid. It should be in the crosshatch there. We're going to go ahead, go ahead and get coolant. We need to replace quite a bit of coolant. We drained everything out of the radiator and a lot out of the block when putting this pump on here, so we're just going to get to work on that for now and start working some of the air out of it. Okay, one thing I went back and did before I started this, I went ahead and filled this up with distilled water right here because I took all the coolant out of the system, and I'm going to go ahead and reattach this hose here now. I just don't want to start out without any sort of coolant in there because it's going to take a bit for it to get through the thermostat. You could also probably fill it right here just fine as well, just wherever. Okay, been running it, having no problems. I'm just added the coolant. It's working the air out, and I started running it through some gears. I was actually a little bit low. Ideally you want it up to this little thing, and I was barely registering, so I added a couple quarts there, and I'm just running it through gears on the inside. I've got it up here, but got the brake on, but I'm just running it through the gears all the way through, back and forth, and just heating the transmission fluid up and just rechecking it at this point. But so far I've added a gallon and a couple quarts, or 6 quarts. Okay, so I've added 7 quarts to this already. Now I don't know that yours will be this empty, but I've got it up here, you know, checking it for leaks and everything. But 7 quarts, and I've got it right where I need it. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and get it off of the jack stands and take it down the road. I've got enough air out of it. I'm going to take it for a test drive, and then we'll recheck the transmission fluid and recheck our coolant. Okay, I took it for a test drive. It's doing really good, shifting really good. I added another half of a quart after driving it around, so everything appears to be running real good. Now this vent tube attached up here underneath, I had a really long tube I was using, so I just wrapped it around up here. I'll probably get a zip tie and secure that. It's just a vent, but do make sure you have one of those on there. So, so I'm going to just get it cleaned up. I'm going to take it to the car wash. But said so far everything's doing really good. I'm going to get the clamp back on the battery here. Other than that, we're all finished up here, and everything's doing good. But overall, I guess I added 7.5 quarts to this to top it off where it needs to be. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video on replacing the transmission in this 2006 Mazda Tribute. And I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, please give it a like, and I invite you to subscribe, and I thank y'all for watching.